So, yeah, I think we're about due to a fall if not all the gay people will return to the Earth. Okay, so looking back, I'm still pretty shocked my first video of all things managed to break 70 views despite the fact the production quality kinda, sucked ass, let's be real here. But hey, if that was good enough to get people to click on it, that means I must have had something good in there, right? Right? Oh god, I sure hope I did. Anyway, yeah, what I think they find is cool is really nebulous when you really think about it. Some people really hard to please and acquire protagonists with 15 different flavors of reality manipulation, or some other nondescript overpowered skill set and a 1,000-page long tragic backstory considered cool by people like me. As long as they punch somebody in the face really hard at least once at the events of the story, I'm glazing them for the next 5 years of my life. But even so, it's not usually too hard to tell when the writer's trying to make you think somebody's actively cool, rather than letting you come to that conclusion by yourself. You know how it is, you're watching something or reading something, suddenly there's this new really strong guy and the character displays a hell on back, even though they haven't really done anything too impressive yet. Like, yeah, cool, you can beat Goku. Cool, what else can you do? Sure, it's real nice that you're nondescript easy protagonists who do all these things, but what distinct personality traits do they have? What challenges have they overcome? How much have they grown since the beginning of the story? What drove them to pursue their ideals to begin with? You might be able to beat Goku, yeah, but you're never gonna move me the way Goku does. I can go on and on about days about the specific genre of rich fulfillment anime protagonists, and while I could go on and on for days about the specific genre of rich fulfillment anime protagonists, they're not the main focus of this video, although they do illustrate one of my main points. Coolness is warranted with action, not power or complexity. If you're familiar with music nowadays, you've more likely than not heard the term industry plant be thrown around at least once or twice. An industry plant, in short, is someone with connections to people already in the industry, using those to achieve popularity rather than their own accomplishments and merit. You know, nepo babies and the like. Coolness, like I said back to the original vid, is a product of the expression of genuineness. Here, some characters can be absolute bastards. Besides the villains whose actions you can understand, the best villains are often the ones that revel in the harm and destruction that they cause. Characters like Zuko are cool because you know what drove them down their path and the subsequent growth throughout the story. But characters like Sukuna, Dio Brando, Frieza, they're just evil, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Sure, it's nice seeing the shit get pushed in from time to time, but outside of that, you can't lie. You got some sauce on them, and I'll tell you why. They own it. They know exactly what they are, and they play to it. All this is to say that back in my Terminally Online vid, I promised to go over what it meant to be him in greater detail, and well, I did need kind of an excuse to talk about more fictional characters I think were cool, so what can I say? Now, with all that said and done, what does being him mean in the connotation of this video? Like I said last time, to be him is to be someone who has an air of confidence, excellence, or some other form of proficiency in something that draws the attention and oftentimes admiration of other people. To be him is to simply be that guy, the baddest motherfucker in the Beehive and the coldest to ever do it. Or, in layman's terms, when someone is really cool and they're really cool consistently, they're not just cool, they achieve him status. Personally, I view him as a gender-neutral term that's masculine leaning, much like dude or bro in this specific connotation, but for this clarity, when you see a femme person exhibit him qualities, it's probably a good move to use the word her instead, maybe them too if they're into that kind of thing. If you do use any of those terms, however, be sure to enunciate them really hard or use all caps. That's how you differentiate them between being used regularly or to denote him, her, or them status. But to further explain what it means to be him, we're gonna have to make a quick detour and explain what it means to have aura. Aura is another word for confidence, or more accurately, stage presence. That feeling when you look at someone and just know there's something different about them. Because of this, there's many different kinds of aura. You have threatening aura, menacing aura, violent aura, scary aura, kind aura, but by itself, aura is a term used to quantify that feeling you get when something just looks or feels cool. Vader's a classic example of a character with immense amounts of aura. He might not do much in the original series, but going off the sign alone, his armor, his cape, his mannerisms, and of course the sick-ass red lightsaber, you can tell there's nobody to play around with. And when you see him act, you know that when he's force-choking people, deflecting lasers with his bare hands, and actually fighting someone, you can tell that aura isn't all he's got. Because of this, Darth Vader and by extension Anakin Skywalker are textbook examples of characters with aura and they've achieved him status. But of course, Vader isn't just him because he has aura, anyone can have aura, but like I said earlier, coolness is warranted by action. Vader isn't just cool because he looks cool, but because he does cool things, and since he looks cool while doing cool things, his coolness increases exponentially, thus making Vader him. But that begs the question, again, what does it mean to be him, and more broadly, what does it mean to be cool to begin with? I touched upon the latter in my original video, but for the sake of brevity, there's a reason why people say something's wrong when they see something that's really cool. Coolness is a universal concept. There's no thing older than someone seeing another person perform some extraordinary act before going, "Damn, that was sick!" Cool things are often called raw because of the raw, unfiltered, almost indescribable emotion that they are capable of evoking. And because of that, I believe that's why him is such a commonly used term. It's short, succinct, and while seemingly vague on paper, that quality makes it all the more fitting. When somebody's him, they need no introduction because you likely already know who they are based upon their previous acts. Like the word speaks for itself, tying back to my whole, the less you try to be cool, the cooler you end up being strict from my original vid. There's fancy titles out there, but I believe that the simplicity of the word him is why the phrase is so popular nowadays. Like, yeah, there's no one stopping you from calling somebody cool, raw, or cold, but like, those are only adjectives, descriptors. But him? Him is a noun. So not if I want to be pedantic about it, but a noun nonetheless. Him isn't just a descriptor, it's also a title. Which is probably redundant, yeah, but you get the point I'm trying to make here. You can't just point at something cool and call them him. Sure, skateboarding is cool, but if you hit a sick kickflip, that doesn't automatically make you him. It might help, yeah, but your ability to kickflip doesn't determine your quality as a person. You might be able to skate, but what else can you do besides that? How strong your beliefs? What actions are you willing to take to achieve your goals? What are you willing to do right by the people you care about? You can rail God to hit none of these 60s all you want, but if you only move away your bitch moves, at the end of the day, you're still bitch made. In contrast, someone who is him doesn't feel the need to constantly remind others of their him status. Note the use of the word constantly, however. In storytelling, the concept of a loudmouth that brags about their skills is one of the oldest tropes in the book. However, the key difference lies in execution. We have those modern antagonists who only exist to be humbled, the overconfident jobbers that only exist as power-skilled protagonists, and then we have the characters whose bragging isn't your average showboating, but rather a statement of fact. I've talked enough about characters like Satoru Gojo at length before in my previous videos, so instead, let's go back a little further and talk about something a little more real. Again, while the word him, as it's used now, has only received mainstream attention until somewhat recently, the character archetypes associated with being him have been prevalent in pop culture for decades. Case in point, the action movie hero. You have people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Vin Diesel, Bruce Willis, Chuck Norris, and, of course, Bruce Lee. Now, of course, this man's an absolute legend in the film industry, so much so that after his death, there was an entire genre of movies that casted Bruce Lee lookalikes to profit off his image called bluesploitation films. Hell, that's not even mentioning the fact that this man's work has done so much to popularize not even just Kung Fu, but Eastern martial arts as a whole in the West, that the guy was so fast that cameras couldn't even keep up with him half time was playing Kato the Green Hornet. Oh, and by the way, the people in Hong Kong straight up called the Green Hornet the Kato show up because it's the only people who are tuning in over there, so just saying. So, glazing aside, why does any of this matter? Throughout most of, if not the entirety of his filmography, Bruce Lee had a tendency to portray characters on screen that exhibited him-like tendencies, which I can go on and off days about, but for the sake of time, while I do prefer the name Chinese Connection because it sounds cool to me, I'll be referring to the film henceforth as Fist of Fury because more people know it by that name. So, throughout the movie, Bruce Lee plays a man named Chen that goes on a rampage on a bunch of karate in their own dojo, not only because they were super racist, but also because their sensei poisoned Chen's master. And you might be wondering, why is this important too? So, back in the 1900s when this film took place, Japan was occupying Shanghai, and as Imperial Japan often did, they were wilding the fuck out, hence the poisoning of Chen's master, and why the karate school went to mock the guy at his own funeral. So, when we see him pull up on the dojo, outnumbered 50-1, we're already rooting for Bruce Lee, and not only does he win, but he also literally makes the students eat their own words. Oh yeah, for a brief bit of historical context, the term segment of Asia, the phrase picture on that sign, was used derogatorily against Asian people starting back in the mid-1800s, but more specifically, it was used especially in relation to the Chinese people back in the day, that's why it's thrown around in the movie. If you really want to get technical, half the movie can describe as Chen silencing on people because they're being racist as hell. In particular, there's this one scene where Chen/Bruce is about to enter a park, only to be stopped in the way because of a sign saying no dogs in Chinese allowed. So one of the guys at the karate school walks up and goes, "Hey, if you act like a dog for me, I'll let you in," and not even a second later, Bruce beats the absolute dog shit out of him, two of his friends, and before he leaves, he walks back, gets a running start, jumps into the air, kicks the sign off the wall, and kicks it again mid-air to break it. Why is that important? We'll get to that later. Now, while this film might have been released back in the 70s, and while it has definitely aged, there's no denying that it aged incredibly well, and you can clearly see how Bruce Lee's work revolutionized the martial arts flick as we know it. Unlike other portrayals of martial arts in Western media, or if we're being real, fight scenes in general back in the day, Bruce Lee's choreography was fast, dynamic, snappy, yet still easy to follow, which was a massive step up from the slow and kinda stilted ones people of the time are used to seeing on TV and film back in the day. And like, how old you gotta be to tell somebody to scram and still have it be cool 50 years later? The Ki, which is the act of vocalizing every time you throw a strike in martial arts, is one of the oldest practices there is. But at the same time, I can promise you this, there is no one out there going, "Hua," or "Wata," or anything else of the like until Bruce Lee did it. Nunchaku, practicality be damned, are fun to watch. Not only that, it's that inherent impracticality that adds their appeal. By all means, Bruce Lee could have just whipped out the staff, which would likely be a more effective and practical option, considering he's fighting at least 7 guys at a time whenever he whips out a weapon in this film. So the extra reach and maneuverability would undeniably be a big help, but no, he chose the nunchucks. Within the context of production of the movie, it's very likely that they were chosen just because they're a flashy martial arts weapon, but in the context of the film's story, we have to understand that despite the fact Old Boy Lee washes every single one of them, the people he's fighting are still trained karateka. They likely would have been trained on to use staffs themselves, or at the very least taught how to defend themselves against them. As a reminder, Fists of Fury took place in 1908, meaning that karate wasn't at the point where it was now, where people had to phase out weapons training in order to focus more on unarmed combat skills to make it easier for people to learn. But nunchucks? How the hell do you block nunchucks? Yeah, people love to yap about how ineffective they are as a weapon all the time nowadays, but even so, let's throw reality aside and look within the context of the story. There is an angry, muscular-ass 5'8" dude with a bowl cut absolutely demolishing every single one of your fellow karate guys with their bare hands. Mind you, not too long ago, he walked in and said, if you want to leave, you can leave now, but no, you chose to jump him. And not too long after that, you see him pick up 2 dudes, use them as weapons before hurling them off to the side like how Mario did Bowser in Mario 64. And finally, when he whips out a weapon of some kind, you want to know what weapon he pulls out at that exact moment? A pair of sticks attached to each other by a chain. I don't know about you, but me personally, the first thought going through my head isn't going to be about how poor and impractical his choice of weapon was, it's gonna be me worrying about what the hell he's about to do to me with one of those things. You know that trope where martial arts guy moves their hands around as after images? Yeah, you can thank Bruce Lee to that. You know what else you can thank Bruce Lee for? Fist of the North Star, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Samurai Jack, Street Fighter, and a whole lot of other shit. Let me explain. Fist of the North Star, while also inspired by works like Mad Max and Finalist Jack, took heavy inspiration from Bruce Lee's filmography, hence the emphasis on martial arts in the series and Kenshiro himself being somewhat modeled after him. And because of the success of Fist of the North Star, Araki would eventually go on to release JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This would eventually result in what some would believe to be the first yandere in manga, Yukiko Yamagishi from JoJo Part 4, Diamonds Unbreakable. So technically speaking, if you really want to push it, Bruce Lee is very indirectly responsible for Yandere Simulator. Genndy Tartakovsky, creator of such shows like Primal, Unicorn Warriors Eternal, Bionic Titan, and of course the previously mentioned Samurai Jack, got his start in animation because he used to watch Bruce Lee movies, pause them, and draw over the still frames. Street Fighter? Come on, it's practically in the name, just look at Fei Long, man. But on a more serious note, it's not uncommon knowledge that Kung Fu Master, which was a game based on the Bruce Lee film Game of Death, would become the basis of the first Street Fighter game. Not to mention, despite being based more on Masatatsu Oyama, the founder of Kyokushin Karate, not even Ryu, the karate man of all time, was safe the worldwide glazing of Bruce Lee. In Street Fighter 2, Ryu's stats would change more to look like Bruce Lee's stats from Enter the Dragon, despite the fact that in the first game, his stats looked more like something you'd see in an actual karate fight. At least, that's what it says according to the wiki, but then again, it was like arcade cabinets back in the day were the most powerful, so it was probably a good thing they went with something a little more distinct. Then, when Super Street Fighter 2 came around, Capcom would add new characters to the original roster, and finally Street Fighter would have a more proper Bruce Lee ripoff in the form of the previously mentioned Fei Long. But all of this begs the question, what does any of this have to do with being him? Being him isn't just about aura. Presence can only get you so far, but at the same time, action alone doesn't cut it either. In order to be him, you need to have both. You need to leave a strong impression on people, you don't just need to be memorable, you also need to be genuine. Like I said in the last video, there's a reason why people call characters, even people they don't like, frauds. It's because they don't live up to their own hype. Now, whether or not that's a result of bias is on an entirely case-by-case basis, but you should see where I am trying to go with this. Bruce Lee and the characters he played are so memorable, not because of his charisma and stage presence, although those definitely did help, but also because he never folded once. If you saw Bruce Lee on screen, you knew he was going to stand on business no matter what. Back to Fist of Fury. At the end of the movie, Chen surrenders himself to the authorities who have a firing squad at the ready trained on him because if he turned himself in, his martial arts school would be spared of the consequences of the absolute rampage he went on throughout the entire movie. But you wanna know how he did it? He ran straight at the firing squad, leapt into the air, and tried to flying kick one of the guys for going out. By all means, realistically speaking, he was totally dead the second he left the ground, and everyone knows that. But if you were invested as I was, and at least half the other people who were watching it were, there was a part of you that hoped that somehow that kick landed and Chen came out fine. But I suppose you can't say that about any cool protagonists that sacrifice themselves or otherwise dies at the end, really. For example, another vaguely Bruce Lee-shaped character is Spike Spiegel. Yada yada, he's a bounty hunter used to work for the mob as a hitman, but he left the game after falling in love with his boss and former best friend's girlfriend, Julia, resulting in his ex-bestie Vicious trying to murder him. Anyway, canonically, the dude's a big fan of Bruce Lee, so much so that he adopts Bruce Lee's quote-unquote martial art Jeet Kune Do, which was really more of a general philosophy of his, but come on, no one learns Jeet Kune Do because of practicality, let's be real here. Anyway, much like Bruce, or rather his character Chen, Spike eventually raids the facility Vicious is hiding out in, fights about 50 different dudes taking all kinds of damage on the way up, runs the ones with Vicious while running off fumes, and still catches the dub in the end. He leaves, he's surrounded by a firing squad, he puts up one of his fingers, and he dies. But much like Chen, there's always that part of you that hopes that deep down he made it out somehow despite all the signs pointing to the opposite. Why is that? Because Spike moves people the same way Bruce Lee moves people. And much like Bruce, people go on to shamelessly rip off or rather pay homage to characters they would love in their own ways. You know what they say, a good artist pays their respects and a great artist steals. But in order to steal, we need something to steal from, right? That's what it means to be him. To set an example, people sure, they get their asses kicked all the time, they might not be the strongest, but with Spider-Man, it was never about their strength to begin with. It was about a guy doing their best to do the right thing despite life constantly throwing everything it had at them. 1, 2, 3, 4. But no matter how hard Peter and Miles got their asses handed to them, they always got back up because they still had people who depended on them. And that right there is why we love characters like Spider-Man. Not because they're the strongest, but because they're solid people all around. But I guess that's all I have to say. I really don't have a proper outro here because I thought this video was going to be something light because the Pride Month vids took a lot out of me, but oh boy, that was a fucking lie. So, I guess you already know what time it is. Thank you for coming, thank you for staying, and thank you for watching the show. Like, comment, and sub if you want more. Take care of yourselves. Peace.